Right now, from KTAB News, your local election headquarters, this is Big Country Politics.
Thanks for being here. I'm Victor Sotelo. We start with the latest on COVID-19 in our community. This last week, the COVID-19 vaccine becoming available right now. Healthcare professionals are lining up for the coronavirus vaccine, but not everyone is in a hurry to get the shot. Some are asking about requirements to get the vaccination as a condition to staying in school or on the job. San Antonio correspondent Zach Briggs explains.
While thousands of healthcare workers across the state are rolling up their sleeves,
by and large, our healthcare workers are very excited.
Some may be hesitant about getting the coronavirus vaccine. UT Health San Antonio Chief Medical Officer Dr. Robert Leverett says there is no requirement for employees to receive the shot.
We're not mandating this vaccine for our employees, only because it's been approved under the emergency use authorization, so we don't feel that we can mandate it.
UT Health, in addition to Baptist, Christus, and University Health Systems, are leaving it up to employees. Leverett stressed some people may have medical conditions that could prevent them from getting immunized right away.
If you get the vaccine, it's likely to protect you with a 90% effectiveness. On the other hand, though, as we mentioned, there's some people who can't get the vaccine. And so the only way they're going to get protected is through herd immunity.
Attorney Joseph Holscher says while Texas is an at-will state, medical conditions that fall under the Americans with Disabilities Act could protect someone from being fired. Holscher addressed employers in general, saying spiritual beliefs could be another reason for people not to get vaccinated.
They might be covered by the Civil Rights Act. That said, in the past, engaging in behavior that's unsafe has not been found to be protected by the Civil Rights Act.
And as you well know, COVID has changed so many things that we do. This includes the funeral industry. KTAB's Mercedes Hernandez spoke to a Big Country funeral home owner to find out what has changed in his business.
We are seeing more deaths. It is happening, and it is overrunning the funeral industry at the moment.
Matt Smith, owner of Fry & Smith Funeral Home in Tuscola, says the pandemic has added to the workload of funeral directors in the Lone Star State and nationwide during an already busy time of year.
Is it because of COVID, or is it the time of year? A lot of people are pointing the finger at COVID, and I would agree with that.
Because Smith is based in a smaller town, he himself has only handled a few COVID-related deaths. But the pandemic has certainly impacted how he picks up the bodies he takes care of. For example, he has to wear a full-body suit in places like nursing homes.
We are taking that extra precaution to make sure that not only that we're protected, it protects our staff, and at the same time protects the other residents that stay at a nursing home.
With the first round of COVID-19 vaccines on their way to first be given to frontline healthcare workers, Smith is glad funeral workers are among those next in line, though that may not happen for a few months.
We are excited about the vaccine. I was contacted by the Abilene Health Department. They do recognize the importance that we play in the role of COVID.
With vaccines now being made, the strain on funeral homes may soon be a little more relieved, something Smith says he's hopeful for.
There's a lot of us that are not sleeping much right now.
In Tuscola, with coverage you can count on, Mercedes Hernandez, KTAB News.
And as you know, recently we've seen an uptick in local deaths blamed on COVID-19, most of which Smith says are being handled by Abilene mortuaries. And moving on to Clyde, where there has been a controversy. Although it's been a big topic of conversation, no action was taken at last week's school board meeting in Clyde. A dress code policy gaining national attention after Trevor Wilkinson began an online petition for change, the students speaking out after being suspended for wearing nail polish at school. And last week he spoke to the Clyde School Board again in hopes of changing their minds and the district's policy. Our Mercedes Hernandez was there and has reaction from last week's meeting.
Ahead of Monday's meeting of the Clyde CISD School Board, about a dozen cars lined the entrance outside the meeting hall, offering visible support to high school student Trevor Wilkinson.
I am so overwhelmed with joy. This is an amazing thing, and I am so honored.
The teen made national headlines after his petition urging the district to change its dress code on male students wearing nail polish gained hundreds of thousands of signatures online. While Wilkinson was let out of in-school suspension last week, he says further action is still needed.
I know that not everything is going to go my way, but this isn't about me anymore. It's about a discriminatory sexist policy that needs to be changed.
Trevor and others took to the podium during public comment to address their desire for change, including Sam Hatton with the Abilene Pride Alliance.
Trevor was in this very room 3 months ago, pleading for the same case, only for it to fall on deaf ears. The only thing that's changed is that people are now paying attention.
However, a Clyde native and mom of 3 offered a different perspective, sharing that all students should abide by the district's rules and that the attention the issue was bringing to Clyde was disruptive.
Because all of these things now were affecting my child, my hometown, and all the other students that I know.
After public comment and addressing regular agenda items, the school board entered closed session and adjourned shortly after, leaving a solution to Trevor's plea up in the air. In Clyde, with coverage you can count on, Mercedes Hernandez, KTAB News.
And the district issued a statement about 20 minutes after the meeting adjourned, writing in part, the district will conduct a thorough review of its dress code when it performs its annual review of the student handbook, and until that time, the district will assure that no student is treated in a discriminatory or inequitable manner. All right, still to come here on Big Country Politics, we'll speak with Dr. Paul Fabrizio with McMurray University, the latest on all things politics. We're back in 2 minutes.
Big Country Politics on KTAB continues.
All right, joining us on the show once again, Dr. Paul Fabrizio, McMurray political science professor. Thank you for joining us on the show once again. Lots to talk about, and I want to start with local news.
Good.
And a couple of big stories that have been in the news lately. And the first one is Abilene Mayor Anthony Williams, apparently headhunted by another city up in Washington State, way up there, and offered him a city manager job.
Well, not offered
Right.
him. He's a finalist.
He's a finalist.
He's a finalist for that job, one of 3 people. And a couple of things interesting. Number one is he's the mayor. He's not a city manager. So that would be a real switch from elective politics to administrative politics is an interesting thing. Number two, he did this. Apparently this happened during the campaign when he was running for re-election. And so this took place. So that was quite a surprise. It could shake up things here in Abilene.
Well, and I want to ask you about what happens if he goes, but first I want to talk about how does that happen? I mean, apparently he wasn't searching for this position. They kind of just said, hey, we're interested in you, right?
Yeah, so there was something about Mr. Williams that made him attractive to that headhunting firm in terms of what the city in Washington was looking for. And so he came up somehow, and they approached him, and he didn't say no. And so, you know, he's 50 years old. He's successful. Why not explore other opportunities? You know, and he can explore without actually taking the job. You can learn a lot about another city by going through the process of interviewing, that sort of thing.
Well, and you mentioned it. This is an administrative position, not an elected position. I mean, city managers, people who work, I mean, they go to school to do this. I mean, they go to school with the goal of becoming a city manager somewhere. This is not the route that the mayor took.
Right. But at the same time, you look at what the mayor has done and all that he's been involved in, especially as we're going through this pandemic. And he has worked closely with our city manager. I think he has a really good idea after 20 years serving in the city council and as mayor now, has a really good idea what a city manager does. And obviously he thinks he could do that kind of work.
Chalk it up to experience, I guess.
Yeah, experience, and, you know, if you're looking for a place to go, you know, sort of a fun sort of thing, why not right outside of Seattle? It's a beautiful place.
Apparently it's going to be hard to say no because apparently it's an island connected to Seattle by a ferry. I hadn't looked at a map yet, but I plan to as soon as I get off the air here just to see what it looks like.
Yeah, I've been up there. It's beautiful. It is just beautiful during the summer. It's gorgeous. They probably get snow, but it would be a whole different set of challenges. It's a much smaller community, much wealthier, much whiter than the city of Abilene. So he would have to operate in a different kind of environment.
Well,
it would be a real challenge.
I would think
for
the
anybody.
politics are a little, or probably a lot different up there.
Yeah, when you're dealing with wealthier people, it might be that the demands that they have are different than a city like Abilene, where there's a lot of people who have less money. And so how do you work with that? Maybe money won't be the objective. You'll always have enough money, but then what do you do with that money? That sort of thing. So he will have different pressures. Also, it's a different state. So there's different rules, state laws that they would operate in. It would be a real challenge for him.
Had a learning curve there.
Yeah.
But he's done it before. I mean, we're all going through this COVID thing, and
yeah.
he's leading us through this. So,
yeah.
Let's look forward. Let's say he does take this job.
Okay.
The mayor decides to take this job. What happens here? What happens to his term that he was just reelected for?
My understanding is that there would be, if he steps down by January, there would be a special election that would take place in May. In the meantime, and that special election would be to elect a new mayor. In the meantime, the mayor pro tem, Shane Price, would step up and be the mayor until that special election.
You said before January. If he takes this job, before January, you said, right?
Yeah, there's a deadline to make sure that they can have a special election by May. And if he takes his job in February or March, it's possible. I think they would miss that deadline, then a special election might have to take place. Not in May, but sometime later on.
So Shane Price, the mayor pro tem, would not just take over for the full term?
No.
And then we would have a special election?
We would have a special election for mayor.
Wow.
So
makes you think who would run, I wonder.
You would wonder who would run. You think about, I mean, there's all sorts of possibilities. You look at the current members of the city council, would any of them step up? You wonder, Jack Rentz is stepping down from the city council. Mm-hmm. Would this cause him to change his mind? Say, maybe I want to be mayor? All sorts of possibilities are out there.
And speaking of Jack Rentz's position, and I'm moving on to this because I also want to talk about Trevor, the Clyde High School kid who was suspended for wearing nail polish. But I want to spend our second segment on that. Two people have put in for Rentz's spot.
Yes.
A young kid, I can't remember his name.
He's 24 years old, a Hardin-Simmons graduate.
Hardin-Simmons graduate. And then Lynn Beard.
Right.
Former police officer, former detective, known him for a very long time, and managing out at Abilene Aero as a pilot now.
Yes.
What are the challenges for this kid who is 24 years old?
Right.
And putting his hat into the ring? I couldn't imagine doing that at 24 years old.
There's always people who like to do that, and more power to them. The hard part for them is name recognition. Mm-hmm. The very fact that neither of us remember his name right now. I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's
we don't remember his name, but we remember his age and how young he is, and that's
right.
Yeah.
But his age and how young he is not going to be on the ballot. His name is going to be on the ballot. So the challenge for him is to get everybody mentioning his name. And Mr. Beard also has the same challenge as well. Everybody thinks they're well known until they actually go and start knocking at doors and go, nobody knows me. So both of the candidates would have that challenge. There might be others who are going to pop up at any time too.
And there's Lynn Beard in your
there he is on the screen
right now. All right. So when we come back here on Big Country Politics, I want to talk to you about Trevor.
Yes.
Again, the kid who was suspended or in-class suspension, in-school suspension over at Clyde High School, and has gained national attention. When we come back, we'll be talking about that here on Big Country Politics.
Big Country Politics on KTAB continues.
Okay, welcome back to Big Country Politics. We're talking to Dr. Paul Fabrizio, political science professor over at McMurray University, a frequent guest here, and we call him to the show frequently because we like to get your opinion on things. And one of the other big stories that's happening in the Big Country, we already talked about the mayor possibly going up to Washington State, but the other story that's gained national attention is Trevor, Wilkinson, he wore nail polish to school, and it's against the dress code, and he has in-school suspension. At first glance, it was like, okay, why don't you just follow the dress code? But apparently, Trevor has gone to the school board prior to this and was ignored, according to Trevor. And so this was his next step, his next, in his mind, logical step. Tell me your thoughts on the attention that this story has gotten.
Well, I think it's amazing the attention that this story has gotten. One of the things I think about is the fact that my understanding is that Clyde was warned about their dress code being discriminatory by the ACLU. And so...
After Trevor brought attention to it.
Yeah, so the Clyde School Board knows what guidelines it's supposed to be operating under. And they're continuing to do it. And so that raises the question why they're continuing to do it. The easy thing to end all this negative publicity on the Clyde School Board, I mean, who wants the national attention, is to just say, okay, and change the dress policy. But apparently they're not taking the step for reasons I don't know.
Is that the easy thing? And yeah, it would be the easiest thing to, or are they trying to make a point like, hey, this is our dress code, playing devil's advocate, this is our dress code, follow it, and try other ways to change it, like during the school board meeting, which Trevor did a couple of times.
So he followed the steps that were outlined that he should have taken as a student, and then he decided to engage in a great act of civil disobedience, which is part of American history, whether we like it or not. It's part of American history. People have taken steps of disobedience to challenge rules, and that's what he's doing. And it turns out pretty much the law is probably on his side. So why does Clyde continue to do what it's doing? And they are probably receiving all sorts of pressure from their people to say, no, we're going to make a stand here.
Their people within the district.
Within the district. The citizens there are saying, this is something we want to take a stand on. And that's very possible. But at the same time, are we a nation of laws or not? And if we're a nation of laws, then I think the eventual outcome is that this dress code is going to be changed. It's only a question of when it's going to be changed. You can't discriminate.
This has come along, this story has come along during an environment in the U.S. where changes like this are on the forefront.
Yes.
And there has been some attention around the nation on discriminatory things like this dress code. And I'm sure that had the climate had a lot to do with this story, right? It just kind of added fuel to the fire.
I totally agree. And I mean, I would argue it is in the background of the political division that we're experiencing in this country today. It's in the background of the 2020 presidential election, where a lot of people feel that societal changes are interfering with a way of life that has worked well for a very long period of time. And when you hear about people complain about an activist court, that's what they're saying. They're saying we're forced to make these decisions. We're forced to give up some of our religious beliefs, for example, because a court of unelected people is telling us what to do. And so, yeah, I think this is part of it. But at the same time, is it worth it to Clyde to continue to make these kind of decisions to stand up against those forces? In the end, they're probably going to lose. So why keep that fight going?
You mentioned civil disobedience. This was his obvious next step to him. This is really almost a lesson that they should really be teaching, maybe in school. I mean, this has happened in the past. This is something we learn about in the 60s.
Yes, exactly.
It's happening right in their school.
Yes, yes.
I mean, why not use it as almost a lesson plan? I mean,
yeah, it's a learning tool.
Yes.
Okay, and this kid Trevor is is following in the footsteps of a great many people. I doubt this will be remembered 50 years from now or anything like that, but he is following. I mean, the easy one, of course, you alluded to him, Martin Luther King. It's taking simple steps and saying, I am being discriminated against, I need to take action. I followed the proper procedures, they didn't work, I'm going to take the next step and live with the consequences. And the danger for those who are enforcing the rules is that often the media attention works against them.
Wow, and we didn't even get to our national stuff. They're wrapping us up. We'll be back on Big Country Politics. By the way, we're trying to get Trevor on next week's show. Dr. Paul Fabrizio, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
We'll be back on Big Country Politics.
Big Country Politics on KTAB continues.
Okay, if you're looking for something to do over the Christmas break, our Noah McKinney may have something for you.
The Cedar Creek nonprofit is inviting you to hike, bike, and even kayak down the Cedar Creek next week. But how are you supposed to float your boat in this?
For specific events, the Water Utilities Department will release water to keep that waterway flowing.
And they're going to need a lot of it to get things moving.
At this event, actually, that's upcoming, we're going to be releasing approximately 1 to 2 million gallons of water. So it should keep it flowing for a time.
That water will flow from December 24th to January 2nd, starting at Kirby Lake, continuing through the stream,
and then eventually is recaptured at Lake Fort Phantom.
It's all part of a process that keeps Abilene's water circulating and fresh.
Quality of water is extremely high. So, I mean, it's to each their own, but the water level is treated and clean. All sediments, everything have been removed.
The nonprofit hopes this event will be a preview of what's to come for the land where they want to create an oasis right here in Abilene. A string of parks connected by hiking trails and, of course, the creek itself. You may remember seeing pictures from the mayor's hike. Well, that event and this upcoming one are all part of the first steps towards their ultimate goal, showing the area's beauty and utility as a city park. In Abilene, Noah McKinney, BigCountryHomepage.com.
All right, thank you, Noah. And the best way to get to walk is on East South 11th Street near the Cedar Creek sign, and we'll have more details at our website at BigCountryHomepage.com. All right, that does it for this week's edition of Big Country Politics. For the latest political news, always go to BigCountryHomepage.com, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place. Thanks for watching.